Hey everybody, welcome to the Cultivation Cast by Black Dog Horticulture Technologies and Consulting with Kevin and Noah. In this podcast series, we cover all things related to indoor cannabis cultivation. Thanks for joining us today, and please keep those comments coming. We really want to get input on the topics you want us to cover, the guests you want us to have on, so we love the feedback. Those of you sending it, thank you, and those of you that are thinking about it, please do send it. We do look at that, and we get a lot of input from it, and that's why we're here, is to make sure we're covering not only topics we think are interesting, but what our viewers want. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for keeping those coming. A lot of you know Black Dog. We've been around a long time, one of the oldest LED grow light companies out there. We've been doing this stuff a long time. And we all got started, at least I did, and we all kind of got involved as recreational cannabis in the US happened. Colorado was one of the first states. And yeah, we're real proud of that in the US. You know, we've got all these states that have legal cannabis. There's still some laggards out there, states that we hope go legal. But what we often forget about is just to the north of us, there's the big federal experiment where Canada went legal. And we're really excited to have our first big Canadian guest on with us today. He's a grower. We got to know him as the head grower at his company, but now he's in charge of research development and solution engineering, which is cool if you're into tech like I am. That's a solution engineering is a cool thing. And he is at Origin Nature. I have had the privilege, I did go up there and speak. Alex did a panel on the future of cannabis, and some of us were lucky enough to be invited. So I was up there, and that's not the fun part. The fun part is it gave me the opportunity to actually visit Alex's grow, where he grows. I got to see, and we will, if Alex approves, I've got some really cool pictures of their canopy, which I've seen a lot of canopies in my life. I'll be honest, it's one of the more even level canopies, which as a grower, I can respect the hell out of. Giant rooms, beautifully manicured, nice even canopies, really well taken care of flower. The kind of flower that you walk in and not only do you see, which I've seen a lot of flower in commercial places, I'm like, I don't know if I want to smoke that. His place, you go in there, you're like, I need to smoke some of that. Really growing some great fire up there and doing some great stuff. So we'll get into all that, his experience, what he's done and all that. But Alex, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being on the show. And I'm going to thank you in advance for all the funny, good stuff you're going to share with us. And you are muted out right now, so there we go. You got it. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Starting working with Black Dog was actually almost a dream come true. I started my career way back, and in 2012 already, I had my eyes on Black Dog. So when I finally got the chance to have Noah on site and show him my facility and finally experiment with the Black Dogs, I was quite happy. You guys definitely have something that others don't, and we feel we're very privileged to have the chance to work with you guys. So thank you again for having me on the podcast.
Well, thanks for that old-timey shout-out. There's some of us that have been around a long time. You're one of them, too. So appreciate that. We do like the fact we've been around a while. There's so much fun stuff I know our listeners are going to want to hear about. One, your grow. I think they're going to want to hear about your R&D you're doing, because you are, for those of you listening, sit down. Yes, his facility is still run on HPS. Yes, and I know we're an LED company. But he's a man of the future, and he is testing diligently, and we've been working with him quite a while now. He's testing multiple manufacturers, multiple lights, hasn't made a decision, but that's not why we're here just to cheerlead Black Dog. We're here because we love what we do, we love the industry, and we love this stuff. So, Alex, why don't we start with this? Why are you still running it? I know the answer, but can you explain the environment you're in, that you have really cheap power? There's not a huge reason to move to HPS like a lot of us have here in the US, but you are experimenting. Can you speak a little bit about your current grow, that you're running HPS, why and all that, and then go into the reasons why you even started looking at LED?
Absolutely. So, first off, we can actually go all the way back in the history of cannabis production in Canada. Historically speaking, Canada produced a lot of cannabis that was destined for the United States. A lot of us were big producers, so for you guys. And what happened in Canada is the world #1 producer of hydroelectricity. So that means that we have extremely cheap electricity. We're talking 3 cents per kilowatt hours. And very quickly in Canada, we were allowed medical licenses starting 2001. So with a prescription from the doctor, we were allowed to grow plants. It was normally 1 gram per day equals 5 plants indoor that you're allowed to grow. So very quickly, we saw some licenses going up to 500 plants, so 100 grams per day, with big warehouse coming into action in Quebec. And that really stemmed from the fact that, well, as you know, it's very cold in Quebec. We don't have the weather for greenhouses. We don't have the weather for outdoor grows. Well, we do have some greenhouses, but it's so much to deal with versus the climate that we have that most people went inside. From that inside grow, we developed a lot of experience. So in Quebec, we're lucky to have some growers, some of them being us, that are renowned for having extremely high yields. So we're talking, if we're talking lights per pound, we hit some 5 pounds per light. So between 80 to 100 gram per square feet on some of our best run, meaning we like to think that we really honed in on commercial standardized production, which is why we're taking so much time for moving from HPS to LED. There's no requirement by the government. There's a green initiative now that's going to basically give funding for that, but there is no rush right now currently to do that. You have to take into account also that Canada is a huge country and we're only 40 million people, right? So one state of the United States has more inhabitants than Canada entirely. So our total electric consumption and so on isn't the heaviest. Canada is a big supplier of electricity and power to the United States in itself. So that's where a lot of that indoor growing mentality came true from Quebec and a lot of that expertise. Now, why we're switching to LED is because I don't need to make the point that it's the future, right? Energy consumption without having regards for it is not what we set out to do. It's not part of the cannabis mentality, part of the cannabis industry. We also do a lot of international shipments. So right now we are in Germany and Australia also. What we're seeing in the world, and it all makes a lot of sense to me, is a lot of green initiative and a lot of green laws. So when we're looking at, let's say, carbon footprint or power usage or dirty water treatment or whatever, a lot of European countries are going to set very restrictive standards. Now, if they don't implement them to other countries that want to export to their country, what's going to happen is a lot of industries or companies are going to basically move to poorer countries that don't necessarily have green initiative. And basically, we're just going to see all the manufacturing power move from Europe and other countries to those other countries. So to prevent that, what they're going to put in place is that you're going to need to meet their standards, their production standards, to be able to send your product over there. So whether we like it or not, whether we believe in climate change or not, which I think is something that's happening, right? The planet is suffering. We need to set our sight in being more ecological, use less energy, and at the same time grow better cannabis thanks to having control on the spectrum or having a new spectrum and really owning in on what plants need.
Excellent. So there's a few motivating reasons as to why you're looking at LEDs now. And so just to give us all some perspective, how long have you been looking at LEDs now? Coming from the HPS world?
Honestly, I started my career back when I was 14 years old, right? That's when I started getting into cannabis, grew my first plant at 17. I started looking at LEDs back in 2012, and I've been running, on and off tests. I really got serious into a whole bunch of testing with a lot of the big names out there in the last 2 to 3 years. But I've technically been testing LEDs since 2012, but up till very recently, actually, with one of the Black Dog tests, I had a lot of issues matching the yield that we were getting with HPS.
Interesting. And so, we're lighting guys. We're never putting ourselves out there as head growers. I will say all day long, most of the guys I work with are people, men or women, are better growers than I am. I just know lights pretty well at this point. But I do like growing. But tell us, as a guy who's really probably a very accomplished HPS. I mean, we know you've won plenty of awards. You got accolades. You're in a great facility. I've never seen such happy employees when, walking around your facility. You guys have an amazing place you guys have built up there and all that. With all that background and experience, you really know what you're doing. Why do you think, with all of your knowledge, why do you think you've had a problem with yields when you've been moving and experimenting with LEDs? You've got so much great data, so you do know when you're doing well or when you're not hitting numbers.
Well, historically speaking, so before I actually did the transition to the legal market, I would say I was lacking a lot of experience. To be honest, growing, whether you're black market or as a hobby versus growing full time and be responsible for an output of 10 tons is completely different in how fast you gain knowledge. Also in the recent years, I was lucky enough to find some great mentors, right? I got a lot of awards, but the reality is I'm just standing on the shoulder of giants, which make me look good. But I was very, very lucky to have some very smart and very knowledgeable people teach me. And in the recent years, what happened is I think a lot of the world started actually turning towards cannabis with legalization and all the opening market, meaning we also had a lot of transition of plant scientists and other big companies putting a lot of effort into LEDs. And the reality of it is we really kind of needed to reinvent the wheel, right? So a lot of the concept that came from bro science that was in the back were not necessarily properly understood, and how, let's say, energy transfer, heat transfer, how plants react to it, how plants can react to spectrum, how you can adapt the actual growing parameters, the fertigation, so on, was a little bit there wasn't enough data, right? I needed to make my own way there. And finally, after all the years and having a lot of support and doing a lot of trial and error, I did find out that some key points that normally are used in with HPS had to be completely different with LED, and that's where we're really started seeing nicer product, bigger yield, and so we're really seeing the advantage of LED. I also like but I also think that just like with computers, what we saw in LEDs, the technology advanced so fast in the recent years that by the time a new model came out, it was almost already obsolete, and you know something else better came out. So recently, really in the last 5 years, we saw such an explosion in the understanding of how to use LED and the actual components that are being used to make LEDs and the spectrum, that's where I think it became possible. If 5 years ago I would have put that much energy into doing LED trial, I don't think I would have hit the same results as I did now.
Certainly the technology, I agree with that, wouldn't you, Kevin? I mean, we had we had slogans, then there was that period where LED really had a nice boom in efficiency, and we saw that in our products, and we're not making the LEDs, those are made by LED companies, not the fixture making companies like us. So, but there was a massive increase there, and I think that is lucky for us, and that kind of put the final coffin in the nail of the old HPS and that technology, that it's got to go away eventually. It is interesting, and I tell you what, I drooled a little bit when you mentioned the cost per kilowatt hour there. That is pretty insanely low. It's the exact opposite of when I talked to our customers. I got some in Kauai, out in Hawaii, that have the most expensive power in the U.S., and I'm struggling. I wish I could remember, because it's an interesting juxtaposition from what you're at. I swear, I think they pay
about 20 times more.
Yeah, I think they're paying about 20 times more than you are per kilowatt hour, but they're out in Hawaii, so I guess that comes with the territory. So, you, as far as moving to LED, you originally spoke briefly about, you're like, hey, I'm starting at these yields now with the new technology, and you are seeing that. Speak a little bit more, because I don't go growing with a bunch, and I don't have a giant grow that's got HPS in it, so you have a very unique perspective. What would you say, because yield's one thing, and we'll be like, yeah, there's a lot of lights out there that'll throw out plant material, that'll grow. You know that, I know that, Kevin, we all know that. We, as you know at Black Dog, we chase a little bit more on the quality side. Yeah, we can at yield, you know that, I mean, you've proven that true, but the quality side, what to you have you really noticed as a grower? So let's say you're talking to someone, let's say you're talking to Alex 10 years ago, you got all this experience with HPS, you're moving to LED. What advice would you give to someone that's transitioning from a really solid foundation, not a year or two, but years of growing under HPS, really in tune with their genetics, their lighting, all that, and they're looking to start to transition LED? What advice would you give them, or what would you tell them to watch out for?
So first is to actually have control over your grow through proper data collection, right? For me, going through the transition of LED and actually figuring out the proper triggers came with understanding a lot of what was happening in the grow medium in itself, and a lot of what was happening with the actual LST, so leaf surface temperature. So understanding the correlation between how the plant is going to react in HPS that emits 70% heat versus actual light, and that there's a lot of radiant heat coming onto the plant, how it absorbs it, how it transforms it, versus the HPS, and how you're going to, let's say, have to compensate to have some of the same effect, or basically steer the plant slightly differently, how you're going to fertigate based on that change on the climate, the actual VPD that's going to be required, right? Because if we base ourselves on the VPD knowledge that we got from HPS, you're never going to get there with LED. You need something way more aggressive with LED. The actual medium in itself, so how the roots are going to develop, what type of roots are you going to develop, what type of fertigation sequence and strategy you're going to implement to get that root mass that you want, and finally, the actual pH and EC of the medium in itself, right? So if you don't have a strain that you have a lot of historical data on that you have all those parameters really honed in, like let's say we talk about CanDog OG or Sage and Sour, just by the pH or the EC at a certain day in flowering, I can tell you there's going to be a problem or not, and how much that's going to affect our yield. So just you're so used to growing something that you know all of that, and then you start working your way from there. So for me, as far as understanding knowledge, and that might be my R&D deformation, is my first step is let's run the plant in exactly the same condition as we would with HPS and observe basically what happened, right? A good grower for me will always let a problem go on till he truly finds the solution, not make 8 different changes, never find the solution, or apply a band-aid solution. Oh, now I have that, I'm going to add more CalMag, I'm going to add more silica, no, we need to figure out, your grow room is an indoor grow room, it's state of the art, it's supposed to be working perfectly, you're not supposed to be using band-aid solution. So starting by doing that run. And one thing that I tell my crew is I want them to make a torture chamber. Every time we have plants going through a sequence, you keep the extra plants and you torture them. You prevent them from drinking, you overwater them, you put them in front of a fan. You need to torture some plants to basically really understand what effect basically causes what to the plant. So basically your general knowledge becomes a lot stronger from there. You can recognize a lot more symptoms, because a lot of the symptoms in cannabis either come 1 week after the actual stress event or will look so similar to one another, right? So really understanding, what did the plant show you when you went from LED, when you had an actual winning recipe? What were the deviations in the root mass? What were the deviation in the pH? And then second run, you start acclimating with the other data that you're going to start taking. So leaf surface temperature and so on. But we have a strong mentality at Origin of crawl, walk, run. And that mentality for us is key to success. Every single company that we saw out there going in cannabis that tried to walk and run, or run right away instead of crawling, and that could be trying to do absolutely everything under the sun. So growing, transforming, oils, vapes, hash, dry flower, everything at the same time. Well, that's how you start having problems, issues. You don't understand what you're doing, and you're not building a solid foundation for the future. Origin Nature was always based on the idea that we want to establish a company that when we retire, we can look back and say, hey, we were part of Origin, it's still standing and still going to stand for years to come, right? So if you don't have that mentality of establish a solid foundation that applies to everything, including your plant research and your plant trials, well, that's where you're going to make a lot of mistakes and not do a proper transition to LED.
Gotcha. That is a good approach, I got to say, and that it's nice to hear someone speak about it that way. To be honest, about the regimented path, going through knowing your genetics. As you know, in our industry, today's genetics is tomorrow's old news. How do you manage that? Because I agree, there's a lot of benefit that comes from everything you just said. And I agree with everything you just said, 100%. My question to you is, as a guy who's trying to balance, you have to give the customer what they want. You don't get to pick what the next big wheat flower is, right? Alex doesn't pick that. You've got to kind of deal with that. So what I'd ask is, if you are constantly trying to get the right flower out, but you want to know your genetics so you can really learn them and get that level of understanding, how do you balance that with genetics out there? And did we?
My camera's froze. Are you guys still seeing me?
It's frozen, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Actually, I disagree with most of the statement in some extent, in the sense that no, the genetics of today are not, passed within a couple months. So what I saw in the cannabis industry, so first off, there's a gigantic professional deformation from the culture coming out of California as far as cannabis come. California is an utopia for cannabis. It's not like that in the rest of the world. So the other thing that stems from that is the complete inability to grow consistent crop with the tools that was basically given. So a lot, when you're talking outdoor, there's a lot of very good flower that can come from outdoor, that can come from greenhouses. And you see that a lot, I say, on the West Coast, where the climate is nicer. The electricity is also, the price is way high. But what comes with outdoor is inconsistency. Why? Because cannabis reacts so much to its climate. It reacts so much to so many little triggers that you can't have cannabis that you're going to put out, and one batch is 22% THC, the other one is 29, and the other one is 18. That's like if you went to the beer store and bought a 6-pack, and in your 6-pack you had a beer at 2% and a beer at 12%. It does not work, right? So that whole mentality of chasing the new pheno, the new strain, came from a consumption habit from the black market that stemmed directly for what was happening in the growing. So once you had a good lot, people got so into use that it was not going to be consistent and recreated, that everybody's hunting for that little lot. Everybody's hunting for that new genetic. In true established market, where cannabis is not culturally something that's, how can I say, put as a priority, like in California, and trust me, I would love for the world to be like California and everybody to love cannabis that much. But most people do not care about cannabis, just like they do not care about alcohol. What is the most sold wine in the world? It's boxed wine. It's not bottled wine. Right there. Why? Because everybody has different hobbies. Everybody has different love of their life. And you can't blame people for not loving alcohol or cannabis or their recreational consumption, right? What they like is the recreational effect. They like that it doesn't break the bank. They like that it's always tasting the same thing. It's a safe purchase. They always get what they want for their money. And, they can basically own in on their life. And, I know I'll always have my 3.5 of Sage and Shower from Originature. It's always going to be about the same THC. It's always going to do the same effect. And that's why they always come back to that. And, it's the 80-20% rule. In California, it's the other way around. 80% of people care about cannabis, 20% don't. And the rest of the world, that's exchange, right? So when you get to those markets, people love consistency, or success is based on consistency. Sage and Sour is the best-selling sativa over 3 years running at the SQDC. We sold over 1 million units of 8 with 0.001% defect rates or complaint, and it keeps going. So what we saw is that people aren't hunting for that new pheno. They're not hunting for that small lot. They are hunting for a company that they can put their trust in, that the product is going to be at the right price, right? Because there is no bad cannabis. There's only badly priced cannabis. Your cannabis could be excellent at $25 for an 8 and absolute garbage at $35-$40 for an 8, right? And that's something that needs to be taken into account. So no, once people find a safe source, you can own in on that genetic and you can keep putting it out, and you will have stable consumers that will keep coming back to it, right? The habit is always going to be, I'm going to take my 3.5 of Saison Sour and another 3.5 of something else I don't necessarily know that I want to try. Just like as you would when you go to the alcohol store and you get you want to try wine. You're going to get your favorite wine that is a safe shot, and you're going to try a new one just to see. So those are consumption habit that you need to understand, what we call vice consumption habit, right? All of this is classified as vice. And no, there's only a very small portion of those consumption that are going to go and hunt for that niche consumption method, which would be small lot and this and that, right? So I don't create the needs of tomorrow. I don't pretend to know them. I can tell you they're definitely not all the new strains popping from California that are so inbred and all taste the same. What we do is we do have pheno hunting programs where people can submit growing data with dried flower that we're going to submit to a whole organoleptic panel with people from all types of life and all different demographics. And based on their review and what they like, then that's how we're going to choose what we grow. We're not arrogant to the point where we know what's going to be better. We let people decide, because the industry is so new and we have so many new consumers that don't even know anything about cannabis thanks to legalization, that I'm not here to talk. I'm here to listen to them.
Got it.
And they reward by buying consistently.
So your way of dealing with the genetic race is not to get in it. It's find the right product, grow the right product, and kind of that if you build it, they will come. You build up that base of customers that respects you for your product, the quality, the consistency, and that's been working for you guys. And we all know, I mean, not we all, but those of you that follow the cannabis space will know there have been more than a few challenges with the larger LPs, licensed producers up in Canada, like Alex alluded to, that they tried to do too much at once. There was a lot of failure up there and some very large dollar failures, but you guys have really dodged that and bucked the trend, and you guys have found success year after year, unlike a lot of the other LPs up there. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and it all stemmed from the crawl, walk, run mentality. We never grew cannabis that wasn't sold. We could have started right away producing 10 tons per year. We started off producing 4 tons per year, right? So we really took the time to establish yourself. We took the time to listen to the consumer when we started off. So in the province we're at Quebec, it's government control. We can talk about that at some point, but I personally love government control. Um, and so it's all stores that are called SQDC. So we went to see the government and we asked them, what do you need? We need a sativa at $5 per gram. That basically is going to be that much amount of THC. That's what we designed the facility for. That's what we started growing. And from this day on, it was a good seller, something we could rely on, and everybody liked it, right? So there is no secret but to listen to the consumer and not think that we know better because we are connoisseurs. Most people we're going to be selling to aren't connoisseurs. We're not selling to ourselves.
I mean, I would say yes, everything you said is true, but I'd say you're missing the fact that not only is it that you guys have this attitude about walk, crawl, walk, run, but also how you treat your employees. When I was out there, you introduced me to, was it you had a chief officer of happiness or something? I mean, you guys are really focused out there on the employee wellness, not just cannabis, but that shows up in the quality of the product. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So we do believe that turnover rates are a big problem in the industry. The training and expertise, especially in something that's so new, is very valuable. And the time that you invest in someone, well, actually any industry, it's one of the common problem of any business nowadays. The cost of a turnover versus the cost of treating your people right doesn't even compare. And what you can achieve with people that form true teams is beyond your dreams, right? Like people will always perform when they're passionate about something. When we set out to believe to build a legacy that's going to survive us and keep on working, well, we need to establish a family. We had 4 core values: family, passion, street smart, and social consciousness. That's how we hire, that's how we promote, that's how we decide who we're going to do business with, right? You know it very well. I ask you to come to my house and spend the day, at night, so we could get to know each other, because for us that's extremely important. It's not about just making a quick buck. It's about finding the right people to come to go on the bus, and then we drive it. So we have 90 employees right now. We have under 5% turnover rate, right? So we're 95% retention. We invest a lot of them, right? So we're going to cover everything that's insurance. We pay 100%. We're going to have a team event every quarter. We're going to have an employee event every month also. So we're going to invest a lot in everybody, getting to know everyone. We also implement a system that's called EOS, where every team has an L10. An L10 is the one meeting per week that you have, where everybody needs to be open and honest. Anybody can bring a problem to the table, and we're here to solve it. So the information doesn't go from top down, it goes from down to the top in how we can solve things. So everybody that's down there working is the specialist in what's going on. So we set the frame for everybody to be able to talk and be able to relay the information no matter who they are. And that's how we basically move forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, a good team is critical. It sounds like you guys do a good job of maintaining those once you found them. So hats off. We need more and more of that, whether in our industry and other industries. I think every company would be well served by taking care of its people, right? If we get back to the growing side for a moment here, I'm kind of curious, as you've moved into the LED and as you've done this now, again, we talk about this, we don't need to talk about the competitors or anything, but as far as your experience with our light, you've had a chance I go back and rewind, the very first time you grew with it, which is quite a while ago now, and up till now, you've had to learn and adapt and really decide how you want to use it. Because our light is just like a hammer in a toolbox. It's just a tool. It's up to the carpenter how they're going to use these tools, right? And in your case, the grower. What have you learned if you rewind to when you first tried the Black Dog up till now? So before I asked you, hey, what advice would you give somebody coming from HPS to LED? But now let's get a little more specific for us for fun. If you talk to somebody that's moving to Black Dog, doesn't matter what they're coming from, but they're moving to Black Dog as an experienced grower, what would you tell them to expect, or what would you tell them to plan for, anything like that, to help them out? Because we look at it, we're so in the middle of the forest here.
Well, so with Black Dog, it was a very interesting story. And, I have to say, first and foremost, a big thank you to you and your entire team. Because, in all honesty, I had some crop failures. I had a whole bunch of problems. And the Black Dog team was behind me and patient the whole time. The biggest comment I can make on Black Dog, and I am not saying this only to make you happy, Noah, but Black Dog for me is definitely the most underrated LED company in the world currently that I know of. So you need to understand a little bit about electronics, I would say, and the components to really figure out Black Dog, in the sense that there's a lot of talk about UV and the spectrum and the coverage in nanometer, basically the wavelength. And everything that's UV diodes will basically die out super quick with the heat sink and so on. So, one of my first comment to the Black Dog team is, you guys didn't build a lamp, you built a fucking tank, right? Like, what is this? and at first it shocked me. I didn't understand necessarily. I was missing some knowledge. And, I was educated on all that. And basically with Black Dog, you're not just investing in, I would say, a normal LED light that we see pop all over. I would say you're investing more in an LED light that has an agricultural, commercial background application, in the sense of how it was designed, right? So when you look at the agricultural world, tomatoes, others, you can literally Google at the government how to grow tomatoes, and the government has rundowns on how much kilograms you're supposed to get of tomatoes per square meter. Otherwise, you're going bankrupt that year. You're not allowed any kind of leeway or issues. And so when we calculate any type of upgrade in the agricultural world, we have ROIs that can be calculated on 10, 15 years. Right? Because the margins can be so tight that's how far we need to go to basically talk about making those upgrades. When you take most LED lights that's been designed for cannabis application, you don't have any talk about 10, 15 years down the road. You don't have talks about ROI based on crops that are already super tight and pre-established worldwide in pricing, right? And what I felt with Black Dog is that they designed their light also with that in mind. So even if there's only a 5 years warranty, I would trust Black Dog to live on for 10, 15 years, just because they're a fucking tank. Also, like, the build is solid. There's a lot of love into it, how it was designed. And all of that, basically attention to details, was also put in the spectrum and the research that they do in all the LED grow lights that I've trialed. And this also comes from PhDs in plant science from other companies that I cannot name, admit that Black Dog is the only company out there that has a different spectrum, because of how they build the light, because of those special diodes that they have, and that they can actually guarantee the spectrum for that duration, versus other companies that are going to add some random UV bars of random UV diodes telling you there's 2 lines and open it at this time, and after 6 months that line doesn't work anymore. And so you're really going more towards that thought. So as a commercial cannabis grower, a lot of us come from the black market. A lot of us have habits, and we never really dealt with the whole profound establishment of commercial agriculture that has some very solid roots that a lot of us should learn more from. Well, that's when you're going to understand what Black Dog actually did and how they're trying to position themselves as a partner with their customers.
Well, I appreciate that. And those of you that might think Alex is saying that just to be nice, you don't know Alex. Alex, the reason we like working with him is he is a straight shooter. At the beginning, growing with him, he had to spend time with Kevin walking through the differences because he's so in tune with his plants that he throws them under our lights and he saw different things and he was worried. So no, Alex is not here just because he's on our podcast, he's saying nice things. He's the reason we do enjoy working with him. He's very honest and forthright to a fault with his observations. If the light's not doing something he likes, trust me, he's going to tell you. So it has been a lot of fun working with you as you've explored this technology coming from HPS. But Kevin, I'm trying to think back because he's bringing this up and some of the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember one of the first things you noticed is purple streaking on your stems when you had not seen that on your strain before. And that's something we hear somewhat regularly, although typically the only people that notice that are the really good growers that really pay close attention to their plants and have been growing strains for a very long time. But we've had, over the years, many people come to us and say, hey, I've been growing this under other LEDs or under HPS for years, and your light is stressing out my plants. It's making them turn purple. And I think you got to experience that yourself, that it's not stress. That's what happens when they get exposed to ultraviolet light.
Yeah, as they would be in nature. So, so really appreciate the props. But for those of you, if you don't know Alex, trust us. If he's an honest guy to a fault. So he's given the lowdown here. So, and let's tap into that for 1 minute because we will run out of time here. And I want to make sure those that we've learned a lot working with you, Alex, and for those of you listening here, he has a lot of information to share. He has been growing for a long time. And we meet a lot of people who've been growing for a while, but they're not great students. Alex is a good student in that every time I talk to him, I kind of learn something new that he's learned, and he's constantly evolving. So Alex, one thing you do a lot of that I respect is you get out there and expose yourself to other information, and you provide information back to the industry. Us giving back not only to the employees, but to the industry, I think we both agree that's really important and important for us to see our industry grow around us. You speak regularly. While we've got the listeners here, I know you've got some speaking engagements. Give a plug, could you? So if they want to either tap in after the fact and watch a recording, or they're lucky enough to maybe go see you in person, where are you going to be over the next year speaking that they could maybe come and catch you and learn a little bit?
Absolutely. So in the upcoming months, I'm actually going to ICBC Barcelona next week. I will be at the Spanibus in Barcelona. Also, I will be at the Cannabis Summit at the World Horti Center in the Netherlands, which is one I am the most excited for people who don't know the World Horti. So the Netherlands is a very small country. It produces close to 40% of the vegetable for Europe. They are gods in the greenhouses. They have a lot of knowledge. The World Horti Center for me, it was a dream since I first visited it. I think it's really one of the place where there's the most knowledge about cultivation of plants. So I've been lucky enough to be to ask to represent Canada and come speak there. After that, I will be at ICBC Berlin. I will also be in New Brunswick at the Stewart Farm Gate in St. Stephen, which is right at the border of the state with, I don't exactly remember which town, but if you want to Google it, St. Stephen, New Brunswick, there will be a 420 concert. There will be Rapper Classified there. I'll be present. And after that, we will be at the McGill Symposium, the 3rd and 4th of June. So we're doing some very interesting research in drying, curing, water activity, the degradation of chlorophyll to complex sugar, and then into simple sugar to basically ensure good consumption experience. And after that, there's also the Grow Up that is actually happening in May. So the executive conference for the Grow Up is the 27th of May. Then the Grow Up is happening. I will be speaking at both those events. If you are a cannabis executive, I strongly recommend the 27th of May, as it is focused on that. We're going to be really talking about everything that's international import, export, establishing brands, basically driving a company to success and being profitable. But that one is going to be extremely interesting. And there's many more to come. There's more Grow Up. There's going to be one in Edmonton. I don't exactly remember the date, but there's I'm open to other conferences. There was supposed to be one in Vegas. The Cannabis Business Time was going to hold it. Unfortunately, that one is probably not going to happen. I might be at MJ BizCon, but we shall see. I was supposed to be at the Emerald Cup, but I just got the message that that got moved also to a later date. So we will see if I can make it. But yes, I will spend a good part of my year going around the world and seeing friends and making new ones.
Lucky. That sounds like a lot of fun, and I do hope to see you at some of those events and get to see you in person again. I was lucky enough, obviously, to see you when I was invited out there to Canada, and it is fun to watch you up in front of a crowd. Alex, we can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy day to join us on the Cultivation Cast. And obviously, as I've said, we've learned a lot from you as you've tried our lights out. We hope you've learned from us as well, but we've certainly gotten a lot out of it working with you. So appreciate both your time today and your time in testing out the lights. Look forward to seeing you soon. I'm hoping again, because last time I did enjoy spending time with you. And for those of you that can't see him speak, if you ever see him at any show, pull him aside and smoke a joint with him. I will vouch that's also a lot of fun. So if you get to see Alex, he's a super nice guy. He's always friendly and ready to shake your hand and meet somebody else in the industry. So don't hesitate if you see him. He's pretty down to earth for a guy with so much knowledge and experience. So thanks, Alex, very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Noah. And a final thank you to the whole team. And I do want to leave on the words that the Black Dog team is a team that has cannabis and cultivation as a whole at heart. You're in the right hands, and no matter what happens in the future, I will always have nice things to say about Black Dog. And anybody that chooses to go with their light, I think, made a good purchase.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for that blessing. And to all of our viewers out there listening, watching, thanks for joining us again for the Cultivation Cast. Please, again, keep that feedback coming. Let us know who you want to see or what you want to learn about. Even if it's not appropriate for the podcast, if it's a deep, nerdy, geeky thing, he'll go into Kevin's corner and he'll go do a deep dive and take you down the rabbit hole. So no matter what the topic is, please do feed it to us. We want to know what you want to learn about. So thanks for your time as the viewer. Thanks for joining us today, and happy gardening.